Hello and welcome back to another lesson in ELA. So today we have other students here because my other student wasn't really cooperating. So we're back and we have some other students here. Okay, so today we're going to be using something called a concept comparison routine that looks something like this. So again, I know it could seem overwhelming, there's a lot of boxes and stuff to fill out, but no worries, we're going to go slow and we're going to stay together. So this diagram is really going to help us focus on the similarities and the differences between the two genres. So today we're learning about the two different book genres, fiction and nonfiction. And it'll help us compare and contrast between the concepts. When we compare and contrast, we're going to explore what is the same and what is different about the fiction and nonfiction books. And later on, this routine will come in handy because it'll help us to record the information that's going to be really super important for when we have to study later on. So when we have to study, we can refer back to our table and it'll help us be really successful on our quiz or our other activity that we might have to complete later on. So your job is to fill out the guide as we go, and I want everyone to stay together. It's really important because I don't want anyone jumping ahead. We need to complete it as a team. We're all working together, and I want everyone to be able to participate. So what I mean when I say participation is that I want you to focus on each section when we do each step. Stay with us when we do each step. I want you to be able to fill out the guide. So everyone's guide should look the same or similar because we are going to be putting the same exact information down. I also want you to share your ideas, share your concerns when we get to them. Don't wait to ask a question if we move on. So I want you to ask the question when we're on that topic or that section of the table. All right, so give me a thumbs up if you guys are ready to get started. All right, okay, perfect. Alright, so let's dive in here. So if you look at the table, we have many sections to fill out. So these sections or parts are known as linking steps. So if you look at the table, you'll find a little number next to each section, okay? So these are our linking steps. So first, I wanted to point out that the linking steps spell the word comparing. Okay, so this is called a concept comparison routine. We are comparing, so we're going to use that word to organize and to go along with each step, okay? So the first step, it is to communicate the targeted concepts, okay? So what two genres, so this part is simple, right? So what two targeted concepts are we going to be learning about today, right? So I just said them. So we're going to be learning fiction, about fiction books, and nonfiction books, okay? So what is similar about fiction books and nonfiction books, and what is different about the two? Before we move on, can anyone tell me, or does anyone have a pretty good understanding, right? You don't need to know exactly, but a pretty good understanding of maybe a definition of what fiction means, what it means to you, or if you have an example of a fiction book you like to read, maybe at home, maybe at school. Anybody? Oh, Piggy likes to read Charlotte's Web. Yeah, you're right, that is a fiction book, okay? Now on to nonfiction. Nonfiction, the same thing. I would ask them Does anyone have an understanding of nonfiction? We would talk about nonfiction. Someone could maybe mention if they like a book about horses or whatever the case may be. We would kind of establish or activate their prior knowledge of definitions of fiction and nonfiction. And then I would say, okay, awesome. We're going to be comparing and contrasting these two targeted concepts. So moving on to our second linking step. Our second linking step is to obtain the overall concept. All right, so fiction and nonfiction are types of what? Right, so when we think about fiction and nonfiction books, there are two books, right? But we call those two types genres. So book genres, right, would be our overall concept. Okay, so everyone should be writing genres across the top. Okay, so moving on to our third linking step. This is where you guys are going to brainstorm some known characteristics for fiction books and for nonfiction books. Okay, so we're going to make a list. So we have to jot down the most important characteristics or distinguishing traits that we might be able to think of when we think of these two concepts. When we do this, sometimes it's easier to fill out the two characteristic columns together because it gives us a better understanding of what is the same and what is different. So first, let's think about the type of information that we get from these books. All right, so does anyone have any thoughts? Gingerbread guy? Does anyone have any thoughts? All right, so you're right, Gingerbread guy. Nonfiction gives us information, while fiction books do not give us information, right? Or facts. Information meaning factual statements or facts. Facts such as the world is round, right? Or the grass is green. Those are actual proven facts. We can get facts in fiction books, such as Sally's shirt is red, right? But that's not an actual statement that is backed up by evidence. So nonfiction books give us information and provides us with facts and factual statements. So who could think of another character? So the first one we're going to write down is information. Nonfiction gives us information, and fiction does not give us direct information or facts. Okay, so we would keep going down the list. I would keep asking, and we would keep brainstorming about the characteristics. So for the next couple of characteristics, we have fiction books can be make-believe, right, Peggy? Fiction books can be make-believe, and nonfiction books are true. So they're true facts, they're true statements. For the next one, we have the types of pictures that are involved. So for fiction, they may include illustrations, while nonfiction includes, most of the time, real photographs. And then we put elements of a story are found in fiction books, while there are text features found in nonfiction books, such as glossary, diagrams, maps, graphs, charts, etc. They do have something in similar though, right? If we look in I also would provide books for them to actually look into, and see if they could notice any similarities amongst the two. But I would have them check both books, look in both books and see if you can find an author, see if you can find table of contents, see if you could find the title page. Do they have chapters, right? So these are things that both types of genres could include. So moving on, the next one we came up with was we could read from front to back, right? So typically when you read a fiction book, you read it from front to back. We would go over how reading a fiction book, you can't start in the middle, you can't start in the back, right? Because you really won't understand the story. Just like if I were to tell Piggy a story and I would skip half of the story, Piggy wouldn't know what I was talking about, right? Because he doesn't know the beginning of the story. That's the same thing as what we're talking about here. But with nonfiction books, we are able to read it in any order. So if I wanted, let's see, so Lammy, if I wanted to read about horses, right, and I was really interested in horses, I wanted to see what they ate, I wanted to find out where they live, and all that information, I could potentially go into the table of contents and I could look up where the horse section is, and I could start and jump in the middle of the book and read the information, right? So if I did that, would I be missing any information otherwise? Could I, right? I wouldn't be missing any parts because I would be jumping to the section that I wanted to research about. I would be jumping to the section to get specific facts and statements. So I would not be missing out on any other information, just the chapter that I would need to research. And then for the last and final characteristics that we included in fiction and nonfiction, we have that books are used to help us learn. So they're used to help us grow and to learn as we carry on in our education, right? And at home, and within and without of the classroom. So moving on to the fourth linking step. So the fourth linking step is the P in the word comparing, and it stands for pin down like characteristics. So in this section, we are pulling information that is the same between the two concepts. So what do the concepts have in common is really what we're asking ourselves. In order to find this information, we're going to refer to the characteristics section that we just filled out together. So I'm going to have everyone turn and talk with your neighbor and write down the like characteristics. We will discuss them as a class when everyone is finished. Okay, so turn and talk, turn and talk. So the two like characteristics, so they would talk for a little bit and then I would ask volunteers to share. So the two like characteristics that everyone was able to write down is that both genres help us learn, right? So both genres of books help us learn. We can learn and we can grow from reading both types of books. And both types of books include features such as a title, or title page, table of contents, chapters, and authors. So they all have those features within both types of genres, book genres. Okay, so moving on, the fifth linking step is to assemble the like categories, okay? So everyone should still be writing down as we go, asking any questions if you have any questions, and listening to the next step. When I call out the fifth linking step, that is the like categories. So everyone should be in the box next to like characteristics. So the like categories are larger groups to which the like characteristics belong. So for example, if I said birds and mammals are warm-blooded, what am I talking about, right? So if I said birds and mammals are warm-blooded, like, okay, Miss Kristen, so what are you talking about, right? So I'm talking about how body temperature is regulated, right? So you can be warm-blooded, cold-blooded, animals, different types of animals are warm-blooded, different types of animals are cold-blooded, right? So these are how the body regulates its temperature. So going off of this, for our first like characteristic, we see that we listed that both book genres help us learn, right? So what should we put under that? So what category should we put help us learn? Does anyone have any ideas? Good job, Fox. Fox says that it's their purpose, right? So helping us learn, it's the purpose, it's the reason why we read, it's the reason why we like to read, we like to learn, we like to grow, we like to take in all this knowledge, all this information. We love it. We're so excited about it. So you're right, Wolfie, good job. So the next like characteristic is the includes features such as the title, table of contents, and the chapters and the authors. So we will read title. All right, so when we see this like characteristic, both book genres include the title. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. The title, the table of contents, the chapters, and the author, right? So these are all components within the book, and you can find all these components in both genres, book genres. So, with that being said, components, these are components within both book genres, right? So all these components are found in all one. So we would title that components in book genres. So the sixth linking step is to record unlike characteristics. So these are characteristics of the targeted concepts that are related but not shared. So here you'll find one box that is separated into two parts. Okay, so one box obviously is for the fiction, and the other box is for the nonfiction. And so it is our job here to come up with things that are kind of like, we could think of them as opposites, right? So we can think of them as opposites. So for the first one, I'm looking down the characteristics list and I'm seeing that the type of information is different, right? We get different types of information from each book genre. So for fiction, for my first unlike characteristics, I could say that fiction does not give us direct information, right? So I'll put that under unlike characteristics. But for nonfiction, it gives us information and it gives us facts, right? So we are able to get information in real life evidence-based facts. For the second one, the second unlike characteristics, I can see that the type of pictures are different, right? So in fiction, we most of the time have illustrators, right? Illustrators are people who draw the pictures, right? There are some instances where real life photographs may be included, right? There are some pictures, but when we're talking about overall, most of the time with nonfiction, there are illustrators to go along with the authors. Whereas in nonfiction, most of the time, there are photographs. So real life photographs, photographers will snap a real picture of an animal, of a landscape, countries, etc., that are real life pictures, and they will include them within the books. So the third and final unlike characteristic that I could find from the characteristics are the order in which we read the book. So in fiction, we can see that we read from front to back, right? So we go through the whole book and we read the book. Whereas in nonfiction, we may read the book in any order, right? It doesn't really matter because we're not going to be missing out on any information. The information that we are trying to look for, we'll still be able to find, and we won't find any information missing. We'll be able to understand everything what the book is telling us when we look up specific information in nonfiction books. Alright, so just like the like categories, we also have unlike categories. So this is our 7th linking step, right? So our 7th linking step is going to categorize the unlike characteristics that we had just mentioned, right? So this is our 7th linking step. So unlike categories are larger groups to which the unlike characteristics belong. So for the first one, if we put it does not give direct information and it gives information and facts, then we are talking about the type of information that is provided in books, right? So both characteristics, although they are opposites, they both tell us that one type of book provides us with information and actual evidence-based facts, while the other fiction books do not give us direct information, right? They give us stories, they give us narratives. Okay, so in this instinct, I would have another turn and talk and then we would go over the answers in a whole group setting. I would have them try to jot down the unlike categories after just the two other ones that I would model the first one like I just did, the type of information provided, and then I would have them jot down the two other unlike categories. So the type of pictures that are provided, right? Photographs versus illustrations. And then the third would be the order that the book is read. So nonfiction may be read in any order, while fiction you read from front to back. All right, so moving on, friends. Moving on. We are going to jump to the 8th linking step. You guys are doing so well. I love the participation. I love the energy. We're doing great. We're going to keep going. So the 8th linking step is to nail down a summary, right? So the N in comparing is to nail down a summary. So we're going to make a summary that explains both concepts and their similarities and their differences, okay? So in your partners, I want you to use the two target concepts, the overall concept, and the like and unlike characteristics to create a definition, right, that makes sense for what we have learned, okay? I'm going to come circle around, and if you need any help, you can always raise your hand, you can always ask. But I think we have a pretty good understanding here. So I would like you guys to generate some kind of summary of what we have put together as a class, okay? So let's take time to do that. All right, so then I would give them time, and then we would discuss it. So then we would come up as a class, we would come together as a class and decide the overall summary, which is fiction and nonfiction are two types of book genres. They are alike because they both help you to learn and include components such as a title, table of contents, chapters, and authors. They are different in terms of the type of information and pictures provided and the order that the book may be read. Okay? So I would explain to them that we use all of those components within the routine to create the summary. And whatever words, I would also reiterate, whatever words we are using within the table, it's important to keep the same words within the summary and throughout the table to keep it consistent so that we can look back and track our ideas. So the last and final linking step, friends, is to go beyond the basics and help us explore the target concepts. Okay, so this is just an activity that we're going to be doing. So we're going to participate in an activity where you will get to move around the classroom, woohoo, and practice sorting books based on their genre and what you now know about fiction and nonfiction books. So everything we just learned, we are going to apply it by participating in a genre book sort, okay? So I know that sounds fancy, but it's just to say that we are going to come in contact with different kinds of books that you would need to decide if they're either A, fiction, or B, nonfiction, right? So before you do that, we're just going to review a little bit. So you guys all did such a great job completing our concept comparison routine. In this routine, we used our 9 linking steps that spelled out the word comparing, that helped guide us through each step. So this diagram helps us to visually organize the similarities and differences between fiction and nonfiction book genres, right? So now I would say, okay, this is our review. We're just going to see, how much we gained from this. And I would just ask them different questions that are relevant to the guide. So things that would help them navigate information, how to find information within the guide, but then also questions that are information-based to see how much knowledge they actually picked up from the guide. So I would say some examples of these questions may include, Piggy, what does our unlike categories tell us? Right, so what kind of information could we get from the unlike categories? Or Wolfie, can you list one like characteristic? Susie, can anyone think of their favorite book? Can you think of your favorite book and tell us if it's a nonfiction book or a fiction book and why you think that? And then Santa, right? I could say, we just read Charlotte's Web, right? So what kind of book is that, right? What genre is that? Is that nonfiction or is that fiction? And how do you know? What information makes you believe that Charlotte's Web is fiction or nonfiction? And then he would answer. And we could build off of that discussion. But yeah, I think that's it. Try to wrap it up. Thank you.